year in the Journal of Travel and Tourism Marketing. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, but this was really fun. He talked about people wanting to run you out of town with pitchforks, and that was perhaps one of the most contentious presentations I ever made, and you'll see why. But essentially I want to answer that question. So what do we need to do? We need a sample of wineries that both have tasting rooms and distribute through the retail channel. So we got to do that. Let's run through this presentation. Why do I have my paper 2 times? I guess because I'm proud of it. All right, so here's kind of the background, is what we're doing. We're trying to see, you know, here's why we avoid distributor margins, avoid retailer margins, retain more revenue. And we got this, let's see, this issue of sacrificing long-term repeat sales for a single high margin sale in the tasting room. So that's the issue. Is this a testable hypothesis? Absolutely. It's a testable hypothesis. I approach it in two ways. One is, are tasting rooms effective at creating brand loyalty or brand awareness? Simple. And then 2, what kind of tasting room is most effective? Is it a relaxed tasting room in which you can enjoy yourself without the high pressure salespeople? Or a more retail oriented high pressure tasting room? So what's the methodology we're going to use? The same methodology that we've been learning to use for the last couple of weeks. We need a treatment group and a control group. Well, the first, when this issue first came up, I was at a wine meeting of wine industry professionals, and they wanted to send research assistants out to wine tasting rooms and measure the high pressuredness of the sales room, of the sales staff, and do all kinds of wacky stuff, and try to get access to the tasting room data to try to get wineries to give us their sales data in the tasting room. You're not going to get that. That's highly proprietary, and individual wineries aren't going to do that. So pretty much they thought this was a dead issue, and it was just going to be too difficult to do. So we're going to treat our treatment or control. I might switch these. We're going to, at least in this paper, the treatment group is high traffic tasting rooms along major wine corridors, but also sell through the retail channel. And this is to answer question 1, I guess. So we're still in question 1, is are tasting rooms effective at creating brand loyalty? And then our control group is going to be low traffic tasting rooms, tasting rooms off the major wine corridors. So the idea is that if tasting rooms create brand awareness, then the more people that go through tasting rooms, the more brand awareness there's going to be, and we should see more sales of those wines.
Wouldn't tasting rooms only create brand awareness locally? Like, if you're distributing all across the United States, it's not necessarily creating brand awareness.
Yeah. If only the tasting rooms were mostly local, catered to local clientele. And that is a good question. You know what the second most popular destination spot in California is after Disneyland? Wine country. So we do attract a lot of tourists. And so we can say that there's people coming in and then they're gonna leave and go back to Nebraska or wherever it is they're from, so. Yeah, but no, that's definitely an issue. Okay, and our test statistic, we need to measure something. So we're gonna look at sales, not at the tasting room, but sales at the retail channel level. Because if a tasting room creates brand awareness and or brand loyalty, and for right now, we're just looking at brand awareness. If a tasting room is effective at creating brand awareness and loyalty, then it's really when I get away from the tasting room that it matters, right? It's when I get to Nebraska and I buy at Safeway there, or whatever shopping center they have, shopping store, grocery store they have in Nebraska. Kroger's, when I get to Michigan or Texas, or when I get back to LA, or Sacramento, or wherever it is I came from. So I really didn't want to look at the sales in the tasting room. Mostly because I couldn't. I didn't have access to that data. Although I do have access to that data now, I'm working on a paper, another paper. But this data I do have access to, right? Grocery store sales, which is what we've been using already. This is IRI or Nielsen data. This is scan data, and we've got access to this. The problem is constructing these treatment and control groups. And it wasn't much of a problem if you have a tasting room map, which I got. And I created, remember what we're looking for is just traffic. We want to see if more traffic leads to more sales away from the tasting room. So I constructed a high traffic corridor. And I used where I live, which is the Glen Allen area, which is probably the most popular in Sonoma, wouldn't you say? No? Okay. Maybe not the most popular, but it's more popular. It's more heavily trafficked than the northern region. We're talking from Glen Allen to Alexander Valley, Chalk Hill. We're talking 25 miles, right? 101. So there's a big difference between this, which is right out, Sonoma Square is right out over here somewhere, and then 25 miles into Hillsville. But they get pretty they get pretty traffic too. But Highway 12 is, at least this corridor of Highway 12, you've got a good selection of wineries.
When was this research done?
When was this research done? Well, it was just published this year in 2015. The publication process is about 2 years, so maybe 2 years ago. You'll have the data, so
Okay.
You'll know for sure. All right, so there's my treatment and control group. High traffic, low traffic. And then I'm just going to compare the trend in sales. Sonoma County is not as well known as Napa, but I wanted another control group. A control group that sells through the retail channel, doesn't have a tasting room, but that is a big name. That has a big, well-known name. And I wanted to use them as a third control group. Sells through the retail channel, doesn't have a tasting room, very well-known Sonoma County brand. What's that? Gallo. I used Gallo, which did have a tasting room in the square, the Hillsburg Square, but it was only open from It was small and it was really nice, but it was relatively small and relatively short-lived. But Gallo would be a good control group to see if, one, I used all wines as one control group, but Gallo Sonoma is a good, because it's got that good Sonoma brand. It's a well-known brand. Gallo is a well-known brand. Sonoma, it's got the Sonoma brand. And then it had a very small tasting room for a very short period of time. So I want to compare all three of these. So I want to look at the trends in sales.
So
Go ahead.
is the high traffic the control group, and then low traffic I'm sorry, like opposite. So high traffic is the to improve on low traffic control, and then also Gallo control group.
Yeah, those are going to be separate control groups. We're going to shrink down the model a little bit, but for this, we have all these. And this, right now, we're just going to look at do graphically.
Okay.
I broke these down by size, case volume, and price point, and we'll break it. We'll look at it by price point also. Here are the individual wineries by price point and case volume. I drink St. Francis probably on a daily basis.
I used to work there.
What's that?
I used to work there.
Did you?
For 2.5 years.
Old Vines Inn?
Yes.
Yeah, I drink that almost.
Good.
It's very good. It's stuff. I like Kenwood. I like Chateau St. Jean. I like Arrowwood. There's Cohen. Blackstone is no longer there. I like Kundi. Landmark, I'm not as big a fan of, but this is all within 5 miles of each other. These are all within 5 miles of each other. It's a very high traffic corridor. Here are the Dry Creek Alexander Valley wines. Much more off the beaten path. Very good wines. Good names. I love Alexander Valley Vineyards. I love Dry Creek Zin. All right. Do high traffic wineries experience greater retail sales growth than low traffic wineries? Here's our graphs. And guess what? They're indexed. Because we got different case volumes. But we want to look at the growth in the growth rates, the trends. So that's Highway 12 versus all wines. Yeah. And the one thing we want to look at is the size of these peaks. So now we have monthly data, or at least 4-week Indian data. And the size of the peaks is important because a big chunk of your sales come at those times. And we want to see, for example, for people that don't necessarily drink wine all the time, on a daily basis, when they do drink wine, is going to be during those holidays. So if you have built up some brand loyalty, you're going to see it during the holidays. When you go to Thanksgiving dinner and you're grabbing bottles of wine. When you go to Christmas dinner and you're grabbing bottles of wine. When you go to New Year's and maybe you're grabbing bottles of wine in addition to champagne or whatever. So we really want to see the size of those peaks. And what we can see here is that those Highway 12 wineries, where they really shine is in those holiday seasons, those holiday months. So we're going to want to make sure we account for the seasonality, because that's going to be one of our measures of purchases. And all that would be kind of averaged out if we had annual data, right? We really wouldn't see the difference in those peaks of annual data. So we definitely want 4-week Indian data here. All right, let's look at our control groups, our other control groups. There's Gallo Sonoma. That doesn't look good at all. Remember, they really don't have a tasting room. It was open for a little bit. Anyone ever go to that one?
No question. So would other things that would affect that? I noticed like a lot of those Highway 12 wineries are owned by bigger groups, like Chateau St. John is Virginia's Treasury,
Yeah.
B.R. Cohen's Vintage Wine Estates, so they're gonna have a lot more distribution leverage than the
It is
smaller
now.
wineries that
Yeah.
were up off 12. I'm not super familiar with Sonoma.
Yeah.
I'm more of a Napa guy, but would that have an effect on it?
Absolutely.
And then my other thing is with Gallo, it's such a powerhouse, they're just kinda in their own world. It makes more sense to compare it to something like Flowers, where they're extreme snow and coast, they don't have a tasting room, but they also have a direct-to-consumer, and they're also distributed nationally.
But we want to see, perhaps,
I'm just kinda playing devil's advocate, I'm not sure.
yeah, and Flowers is, Punez?
Yeah, they're Cunez, but they're nowhere near like Gallo or
Yeah.
Treasury or something of that essence. I don't know.
Yeah. What I wanted to control for was the Sonoma name,
Yeah.
the Gallo brand, but no tasting room. And
Cool.
Gallo kind
Yeah.
of control for that. Flowers, I'm not sure if it satisfies all three of them.
Yeah, no, they don't have a tasting room either, that's what popped into my mind, but yeah, I get where you're going, I'm just,
But they do sell through the retail channel.
yeah, they sell retail and through, DTC. I just, to me, they're all don't look like apples together, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's so hard to get everything perfect too, data's
Yeah.
just so hard to work through, so.
well, we'll see, we're gonna answer, this is
Cool.
one part, and we're gonna have a better look before, this is the smaller part. Here's North Sonoma and Highway 12. And you see kind of, more peakedness in Highway 12. But the trends are relatively similar. So, I'm not sure what to make of this. Yeah, the results are kind of muddled. If you do notice, well, if you measure the peakedness, then I guess Highway 12 wins. But it looks like North Sonoma is catching up. If you look at it by price segment, here's under 10, which is where Gallo should shine, and it doesn't. Here's 10 to under 20. Gallo was doing all right. Again, it's shrinking, kind of muddled. Here's 20 to under 30. This is not Gallo's forte. And then here's 30 to under 40. Kind of a mess when you break it up by price point. But you can see the peakedness of Highway 12. So the results of this is somewhat messy. Just kind of a drag. Here's all of them together. Let's see. If you look here, this is where you can see Sonoma peaking during the holidays more than the others. All right. This is really the more important question, which is what type of wineries are better at building brand loyalty? High pressure or low pressure? And here again, we got to come up with a treatment and control group. What is our treatment? What is our control group? Treatment group, wineries with high traffic area, high density tasting rooms. So and then the control group is high traffic, low density tasting rooms. And then we're gonna look at the same thing. We're gonna look at long-term sales. Here's the tricky part, coming up with our treatment and control group. So two regions with similar traffic, but lower density tasting rooms. And really, the lower density tasting rooms probably have less traffic also. Let's start with the treatment group. When you think of high traffic, high density tasting rooms, what do you think? Think of not one winery though, a corridor, like what we did in. Yeah. So when your friends come, and they want to go wine tasting on the weekend, where do you not take them? Napa, exactly. Specifically what?
That Highway 29 stretch.
Highway 29.
That's all, I don't know any better. I'm a Napa guy, so that's where I go. Or Silverado. but-
Yeah, but you're talking bumper to bumper, busloads of people from Nebraska, elbow to elbow tasting room.
They're all going to be Situate.
It depends on the best part of the product. Some people want that,
Yeah.
other people don't want that.
No,
Some
I
people-
agree with you.
It's just as much like going to taste wine as do they like to be part of a crowd or not part of a crowd?
Yeah. But, and that's what we're taking, we'll kind of, you know, I don't know anyone that wants to go to a tasting room where they gotta wait 20 minutes to get served.
About the same kind of people that go to like the Great American or Six
Yeah,
Flags,
isn't it like
yeah, on a
that?
busy season.
But think about it, when I go to Disneyland,
Yeah.
I expect traffic,
Yeah.
Yes.
it's LA, I expect to wait 45 minutes if I'm lucky to get on a ride.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't go. I send my kids and my wife, and I always find some emergency that I have to attend to. Oh my God, you won't believe what you just called me. I'm not going to be able to make it. Yeah, but that's expected. When you go to wine country, you want to enjoy yourself. Most people go to wine country, they think, you know, rolling hills and vineyards and.
Then why do people keep crowding 29?
Yeah.
If they don't like it, I mean, eventually that would die if they don't know any better.
Because they're tourists, and that's where the buses take them, and they don't know any better. Yeah, they don't know any better.
That's where I go.
Yeah.
They're all going to be Situate.
Highway 29 is bumper to bumper, so they're just stuck on, I mean, being stuck in traffic in wine country is like being stuck in traffic anywhere else. It's not fun. But now we have to find somewhere that has a comparable corridor but isn't really busy. But is comparable to Napa. Lake County?
The trail?
What'd you say?
The trail.
Yeah.
Okay.
And look at that. They're right next to each other. They run parallel. And it's pretty hard to say that Silverado Trail is completely different than Highway 29. They are, by the way. But they're literally, you know, they run into each other at the tip. So we can say this. The difference between Silverado Trail and Highway 29 is really, one, the nature of the traffic, and two, the nature of the tasting room. Highway 29 is Disneyland. You walk in there, you're getting t-shirts, they're trying to get you to buy wine, they're trying to get you to sign up. It's a completely different tasting room experience than Silverado Trail. The last time I was on Silverado Trail, I went in, I got poured, they told me to take it outside, enjoy the view, it's 100 and something. They said they'll come out and they'll give me the next pour. Never once was I asked to fill out a card, to buy how many bottles I wanted to buy, or anything else. It was a really enjoyable tasting room experience. The last time I had that anywhere on Highway 29, well, I don't remember the last time I had that anywhere on Highway 29. It's just tough. So this you would have to argue is probably a pretty good treatment and control. They're literally adjacent to each other. They run parallel, they're geographically close, but they're worlds apart in terms of tasting room experience. And that's what we want to measure. We want to measure the effect of tasting room experience. Sonoma one was kind of muddled. We didn't get much out of that. But this one looks pretty good. At least in my opinion, this looked pretty good.
Well, that's the problem though, it's an opinion, how do you quantify something like
By looking at the numbers.
that? What numbers actually? Well, I'm trying to separate opinion from fact.
Opinions, oh, you mean my opinion of Silverado Trail versus
I
Highway
completely
29?
agree.
No. So what I did in the paper was I actually used social media. And I went out and I got a sample of Yelp reviews of wineries on Highway 29 and and wineries on Silverado Trail. And guess what they all said? What we just finished talking about. So again, those are still opinions. They're individual opinions. At some point in time, opinions become data and you can kind of, so it's not just you and me that think that way. That guy loves 29. He thinks I'm full of crap. And by the way, imagine presenting this at a conference in Napa, at a wine tourism conference in Napa. Imagine the response I got there. It was bad. It was really, really bad. They had to escort me off the front of the stage. They had to, when I got back to my, and I'm not even done yet, by the way, you'll see why. But when I got to my table, a gang of people accosted me immediately, and they were asking me questions. They weren't violent, but they could have got that way. But they were, peppering me with questions. The next speaker was up. Nobody was paying attention to her. The moderator had to tell them to quiet down. They literally told me, let's go outside. Not to fight, but they said, let's take this outside so we can, because it was the head of the Napa Valley Chamber of Commerce, it was the head of the Napa Valley Tourism Bureau. All these people were just furious after this presentation. So, and we haven't even gotten to that good part yet. But this is my assumption, that Highway 29 is not a good tasting room experience, but it's high traffic. Silverado Trail is a good tasting room experience, and it's not as high traffic. So would we expect to see a difference in trends and growth rates of wineries along those two corridors? If my hypothesis is right, then we should see more growth. We should see more brand loyalty and more growth in sales away from the tasting room of these wineries than these wineries. If my opinion is right. And again, this is when we test opinion. We test hypotheses. So we just look at the data. And we had muddled results in Sonoma. And we'll go, we did the price point of the two. We did it by winery. Let's look at the data. Highway 29 sales. Those are all wineries. We see that nice peakiness. So during the holidays, you're seeing a nice response, but it's not a whole lot different than all wines. There's Silverado Trail. You see two things. One, look at the peaks. The peaks, they're blowing them away. They're blowing Highway 29 away in the money season, right? The fourth quarter, when it counts. OND. And also, look at this trend here. I wish I had more data because I bet that trend has gotten, that distinction has gotten greater and greater.
I go back to the core marketing kind of thing. Customer service, and when you first create a business or an idea or whatever it is, you want to be something different and original. When there's already, 10 major wineries on the road, why open the 11th? You're not going to be, you're just not going to be seeing that difference. Too late. There are 10 guys that did it before.
What's your point?
This, what you're talking about, like differentiating, being on a lesser traveled road,
Yeah.
offering more customer service, making the customer happy. That is, those are like core ideas of a marketing person. That when you design a business, you got to think like different. Like it would be foolish to try to open something like a Disneyland right next door to Disneyland. Right now, I mean, you'll be okay. You'll make money, but you won't be as big and as grand and as knowledgeable as Disneyland. Unless you really, really differentiate. You have to be different in whatever kind of business you start and open, and going through the differentiate.
We'll try to answer that question. Skeptics. But that's good. That's why we do this stuff. If everyone agreed with me.
I would think that, well, this data sort of agrees with what I'm learning marketing.
Well, I would say that, who's your marketing professor?
Roy Gatnella from Junior College. I don't listen to Rich as much. Rich is good, but I think Roy's better.
I think combined the two of them.
Combining the two of them, of course, is fast.
That they.
So is this data where the case volume,
Yep.
that from the
Yep.
And then using like customer experience to be
Just to justify the selection of our treatment and control.
Okay.
All right, so, but let's move on. And there's all wines together. So we do see some distinction. Let's go by price segment, and we see Silverado Trail killing by price at the under $10. And yes, there are under $10 wines on Silverado Trail. They don't taste them in the tasting room. Just like when you go to Robert Mondavi, do they pour Private Select, which retails for what?
$6.
$6. Do they pour Private Select at the tasting room?
Never been done.
Your best guess.
Yeah.
No.
It's not worth the hour and the to
Exactly, it doesn't make any sense. So they pour their signature wines. And it's the same with Silverado Trail. So everyone said, well, there's no $10 wines on Silverado Trail. Yes, there are, they just don't pour them there. But you can buy them, they're in the data. I had to get them somewhere, and you can pull it out of the data and give you all the stuff. Okay, here's 10 to under 20. We see some muddledness. No one's doing very well. 20 to under 30, again, not much. Over 40, we're seeing kind of the holiday peaks of Silverado Trail a little better. So we see a better sign. We see a better sign here. All right. So at the low end and at the high end, we see Silverado Trail outdoing Highway 29. I thought about, we need better control groups. It turns out there's two kinds of tasting rooms. Open, in which anyone can walk in and taste, and reserved, in which you need a reservation. And the nice thing about that is that Highway 29 has both open and reserved, and Silverado Trail has both open and reserved. So if you didn't like my comparison of Silverado Trail and Highway 29, if you think they're whatever, there's some marketing stuff that he learned at the JC that doesn't that disqualifies it, or Rich Campbell babbled about something. Rich Campbell belongs to the JC too. But in either case, if you didn't like my comparison of Highway 29 and Silverado Trail, then you've got to like my comparison of Highway 29 with itself, right? And you've got to agree that a reserved tasting room is going to be more reserved than an open tasting room? Reserved in terms of relaxed? Would you say that? A tasting room that requires a reservation isn't going to have a busload of tourists from Nebraska. It's not going to be elbow to elbow with people in overalls and straw hats.
I would agree with that.
And it's going to be a much more relaxed, enjoyable tasting room experience than an open tasting room. Would you buy that? Along the same corridor of Highway 29. So we're talking about wineries along Highway 29. So, you didn't like my Silverado Trail Highway 29 thing? You gotta like my 29 versus itself thing. The more relaxed tasting room, in my opinion, or my hypothesis is, creates a better brand loyalty, and we're gonna see better sales away from the tasting room of the more relaxed tasting room, relative to the open tasting room in which you've got busloads of tourists and high pressure sales. So let's do that comparison. Validating our results. All right, so we looked at Highway 29, we did the same thing, reserved and open tasting rooms on Silverado Trail. Here's our open and reserved on Highway 29. Look at that. Highway 29 reserved is killing Highway 29 open. But that makes sense if relaxed tasting rooms build greater brand loyalty. And this isn't even close. Look at the scale. This isn't 0.2 and 0.3 and 0.4. This is 100%, which makes that 200%. In other words, the growth rate of reserved winery away from the winery is significantly greater than the growth rate of open wineries along the same corridor of Highway 29. Now, you gotta ask yourself, well, what's the difference between the two? They're both on Highway 29, but one's reserved, one's open. Now, I'm gonna say that reserved tasting room creates a more relaxed environment, results in more sales away from the tasting room, the retail channel. You could try to attribute it to something else, again, that's not a learning Campbell's or JC. But I'm not sure what that other thing is.
You would think that reserved tasting rooms would be a better demographic or a demographic the public had more fluid money that they want to spend or more dispensable money versus an open tasting room that is just not bad.
Yeah, but these reserved, these open tasting rooms are some of the biggest brands in the world, right? Mondavi, what's the other one?
I got one more thing. So if you look at the clientele that go to the reserved tasting rooms, you're paying more money for that experience too. So their clients have more money to spend, or they're more dedicated to wine than people would just go to the typical open tasting room.
But we're not talking about sales.
Okay.
We're talking about the growth rate in sales.
Okay.
So we're saying, sure, they got more money, they buy more wine. We're saying that the growth rate in sales is different. And that's why we're looking at the trend. We're not, right? We're not looking at they sell, plus more expensive wine. In case volume, go back to the statistics, but in the case volume, I'm sure of the Highway 29 wineries is probably greater. The marketing budgets of the Highway 20 of the big Highway 29 open tasting rooms is probably a lot bigger. So if you're going to argue that well, it's a marketing effect, these wineries, I don't have the data, but I would bet spend more on marketing than these wineries. And what we're looking at is the growth rate in sales, and I'm saying the difference in that growth rate, which is huge, by the way. Again, these axes, these are huge numbers. And look at the peaks. The peaks aren't even close. And the peaks are important in the wine industry because that's where, again, people that don't normally buy wine are buying wine. So if we looked at annual data, we wouldn't get as drastic a results as you get here. And I think this kind of hammers home the point. The other one was pretty clear too, by the way. We just saw sales of Silverado Trail wineries growing faster than those of Highway 29. But now this is 29 versus itself, so.
I assume to further define open and reserved, that reserved is,
You need a reservation.
reservation is a seated tasting where you're more or less courted by a host or hostess, and an open is maybe mixed, but also bellying up to the bar.
Sometimes it'll be tourist.
Yeah, I didn't go that deep into the data. In that map I showed you, there were little squares. Squares were open and diamonds were reserved. And I thought, okay, once I saw that they had that distinction, I said, there's another treatment and control. And I didn't really go into how the reserved ones were, what the tasting room experience all of those were. There aren't that many of them, by the way. But you can already see why Napa would be upset with us criticizing its crown jewel of Highway 29. Although this isn't a criticism of Highway 29, this is a criticism of high traffic tasting rooms, of crowded tasting rooms, of congested tasting rooms, of not having an enjoyable wine tasting experience. Now, what do we expect on Silverado Trail? Silverado Trail, remember, isn't high traffic in the first place. So
Even when they have an open tasting room, because
there's nobody there. There's not as many people there.
They're already getting similar service to as if they had reserved, because there's nobody else around. So now that tasting room worker is focusing on the few customers that do walk in.
So
They're getting treated special, and that's what customers like. They like to be treated special.
but that's the open tasting rooms. on Silverado Trail.
Yeah, but it's open because he said it's like, when he said it's less traffic.
Yeah.
Versus on Highway 29, there's 10 other people around you, you're elbow to
Yeah,
elbow.
no, we got that, but we're back on Silverado Trail. What about the reserve versus open on Silverado Trail? Should we see the same kind of behavior in the reserve versus open on the Silverado Trail?
I don't think so, because I'm not understanding or seeing the correlation between, I'm assuming that reserved, maybe the prices are higher.
We have to pay, usually, there's a reservation.
And, so just because you're paying more to taste the wines, and you're paying more for that bottle of wine, doesn't mean you're gonna sell more.
No, it doesn't.
So it's blowing my mind.
So the only thing I can attribute this to is tasting room experience.
So,
That's what
yeah.
that's what we keep going to. But that was the whole point of this whole paper. So, we and you guys aren't the first ones to criticize this. The entire Napa community did at that conference.
I agree with you. I'm just trying to.
And you should look for holes. But the results keep coming back saying the same story keeps being told. I look at the data another way. I'm getting the same story. But now we're looking at Silverado Trail. And so should we expect the reserved tasting rooms on Silverado Trail, which is already a relaxed tasting room environment, to exhibit the same faster growth rate than the open tasting rooms on Silverado Trail?
You should not.
You should not, because what? Because all reservations are doing are what? Reducing traffic.
Yeah.
Reducing traffic,
So it's already-
which wasn't a problem in the first place. And that makes sense to me. That's what I would expect, right? On a lot of these papers, I ask you, before we do the analytics, the first thing I ask you is write out the model. What do you expect to see? What's your expected? Not what do you get. I ask you that, calculate the growth rates and all that stuff. What do you expect to see? And that's what I'm talking about. So let's look at Silverado Trail. Here's open and reserved, and we don't have as many reserved. Price points. And here are the Silverado Trail open versus the Silverado Trail reserved. And you see kind of the opposite. I mean, there is some greater peakiness for the reserved wines, but just less traffic, right? We got less traffic here. And you've got more traffic here, but traffic's not an issue on the Silverado Trail for the most part, as far as I know. Right? It's not like I spend all my time at tasting rooms, but I've never been on the Silverado Trail when it was really heavily trafficked. I've never been at in a tasting room on the Silverado Trail where it was really crowded. You can't say that about Highway 29.
So you're testing the relaxed environment, correct?
A relaxed versus a more relaxed.
Okay, but this is already relaxed, so why are you even testing this? Because you think it's relaxed, right?
Because I wanted to see if we saw the same results. Because in this case, I actually expected this to decrease, because all you're doing with the reservations now is reducing traffic, and traffic wasn't an issue in the first place. So remember, the first part of the paper is, does tasting room traffic result in greater brand loyalty? What you're doing now is limiting the number of people that can enjoy a tasting room that really isn't very crowded in the first place. That's rather enjoyable to begin with. So you're just limiting traffic now. And if you limit traffic, then you reduce the brand awareness effect. So it's that brand awareness and loyalty. Now fewer people are going to be exposed to these wineries, so when they go home, they're not going to know who they are. When they get back to Nebraska, they're shucking corn or whatever they do, they're not going to know who these brands are. Unless they made a reservation, but it takes forethought. And this is Highway 29 reserved versus Silverado Trail open. And now you see Highway 29 reserved actually, lots of traffic, lots of customers, but relaxed tasting room environments. Versus Silverado Trail open, which is not as much traffic, but a relaxed tasting room environment. We need traffic, but we just don't want congestion. Right? We need people to come through here and be exposed to our brand, be exposed to our wines, and to create some loyalty by having a good tasting room experience. But at some point in time, that positive becomes a negative, right? Things get congested. Man, I've been waiting here 20 minutes. I'm almost done with my tasting. You know, at some point in time, you just want to get the heck out of there, right? I can't be the only one that's been through that experience. It's a drag. You're too deep behind someone, and you're just, you know, they're trying to remember, were you on the cab? You just finished the Merlot? Now that's like being at a crowded bar. It's a different, and there's nothing wrong with being at crowded bars, but it's a different experience than a wine country experience. And then the funny thing is, at that conference that I mentioned at the beginning, is the first presenter said, people don't come to wine country for the wine. They come for the wine country experience. Boom, I already knew I'm being set up perfectly, and I didn't pay her to say that. But she said, you know, they did a bunch of survey stuff, and they said, people come more for the wine country experience than they do for the wine. And that's what they want, and that fits the narrative that I have, that I'm trying to tell. The data seems to consistently show it over and over, no matter how we look at it. We got traffic, but not congested tasting rooms. That's a good thing, and that shows up in sales away from the tasting room when you get home. So again, more consistent results, consistent with my hypotheses. Did I win the Napa guy over yet, or you're not convinced yet?
No. Yeah, no.
You're getting there. Well, this is pretty much the end of the paper, so. All right, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna, yeah.
Sorry, I had a quick question. It seems like you proved your point, like, on the Highway 29, not, like, I don't understand why you need the water, it's still not clicking in my head. Because you proved your point that reserve is better than,
Yeah.
so I don't understand why you even model it to a relaxed environment if you already proved your point.
It's kind of like running up the score in a football game.
Okay.
You want to prove your
you
point.
wanna, like, pound it.
You want, I want to pound home my message.
All right.
Well, yeah, because I knew when I went to Napa to present this, I knew the response. I knew what was going to happen. So you want confirmatory results. Let's look at it a little differently. Let's do this. What's that?
Did they hire you to go in and do a presentation, or?
Do they hire me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get paid for this.
How do you just submitted the data and they asked you to present, or they didn't know what you were gonna say?
They wanted me to present because they knew I was doing research on tasting rooms, and this was a conference of the tourism and wineries that are part of the tourism.
So they just said like, hey, you're a smart guy, come talk about this, and then you went and you got the bad mouthing them.
Yeah.
Bad mouth.
Not bad mouthing, but just showing them a new light that they really have considered.
And it's not like I'm the first one to raise this issue, by the way. This issue's got to come up, especially with you. You're the marketing guy. You know, how many emails are too many?
Well,
When do you get
depends
put in the
who's-
spam folder?
It depends on the frequency, and each person has a different number of times they can ping. Like California Wine Club, they hit their members 2 or 3 times a week, whereas I found a reduction in kind of clicks if I do it more than twice a week. Excuse me, more than twice a month.
Yeah, you got to look at the data. There's only one way to. You know. And some of the, you know, if you read the paper, a lot of the literature I looked at, because this had never been done before in the wine industry, but there was a paper in which they looked at car salesmen and high pressure versus low pressure car salesmen. And, you know, Saturn at one point had that deal where they didn't have, their salespeople didn't negotiate, right? They just said, we don't negotiate prices. There's our price. We're not going to haggle. We're not going to put you through that horror if you've ever bought a car, and it is a horror. It's just a pain in the butt. So, you had your hand up?
Yeah.
Someone had their hand up.
Saturn is out of business now, though.
Yeah. No, I know it's a bad example. But when I read the paper,
Sorry.
one of the
I've been
paper,
playing devil's advocate all night.
when I read the paper, that was one of the examples. But they did do, you know, it's tough because you've got to have a treatment and control group. And one of the papers I read was car salesman. But if you've got 2 different cars, like, how do you compare Ford and Honda? That was tough. So what they did was they chose, you know, like one of the subcategories. I think it was for Chrysler and what are one of the other Chrysler brands or something. like two brands that are the same, like Pontiac and, Pontiac is Pontiac still around?
So Honda and Acura?
Like Honda and Acura, although Acura is upper. This was, there used to be Pontiac and Oldsmobile, but they were the same cars, they were just relabeled, and they did stuff like that. All right, so methodologically, what are we gonna do? We're gonna examine a time trend. And this is a little bit reversed in the paper. So let's just treat Highway 29 as our control group. So we know that. We know that equation. We've hammered this one in. Let's throw in a holiday dummy. And we'll just use one. We can use monthly dummies, but we'll just put this one in here to account for that peak. We know how to generate this dummy. One if month is October, or November, or December. Do we know how to use or in Stata? So we know how to use and, right? We've used and. Yeah. We know how to use and. And is, right? The ampersand. Or is it 8? It is, where did it go? Where did it go? Yeah, there it is. Above the return. Let's make sure yours has it. Yeah, there you go. It's the slash. That should be straight, right? Not angle.
If you do absolute.
Yeah, if you would like to do absolute value. It's above the return, and what's the other? It's a slash is the lower, right? So this is or. Or you can do it month greater than 9, less than what? Less than or equal to 12. So that's or. All right. So there's our model now. That will examine the time trend along Highway 29, including a holiday dummy that'll basically spike up, just like when we did the December dummy or the monthly dummies in our monthly goal.
So when we're creating that variable, we do October and then the straight line, then November, straight line.
Or, exactly. Because you can't use and, because you can't be both October and, so it's got to be or.
Okay.
Now we need to account for our treatment group. And our treatment is going to be niceness. What's it like if you treat people nice? If you have a relaxed tasting room? So a treatment doesn't have to be something bad. This is something good. If Silverado Trail, no. So our model now becomes that. Holiday and Silverado are both dummies. An interaction to account for the difference in time trends. So we need to add Silverado times time, right? And we get that. Is that it? What else do we need? What else? Remember, we want to look at the difference in peakiness, peaks. So an interaction between Holiday and Silverado. So we can see if the Silverado holiday effect is greater than the Highway 29 holiday effect. And again, that's a big deal in the wine industry. Win those months. So now we got that. I think I did it on this. But let's see. All right, we're gonna go old school and have to write stuff out. Go ahead.
This makes way more sense than what we were doing, and you should have let off of this, it's like, it's clicking.
This is the frame.
Well, but I didn't start, well, what we started was with that, right?
True.
2 homeworks ago, 2 problem sets ago was that.
That's true.
Then we added a before and after. We had a homework on
Right,
that.
so it's kind of building.
Then we added the treatment and control with the before and after. So it's not, yeah, it's not like I gave you the whole, like this problem set, it's not like I gave you.
That's true, if we started with this, I would drop, but.
There's still time to get you the job. I get a commission for each show.
Really?
No.
That would be true.
The paper I'm doing right now, I'm trying to see if, because if you work on commission, then it's really built in for you to be more high pressure than if you don't work on commission. So that's what I'm trying to see now is if, I'm trying to answer the same question. In terms of club memberships and length of club memberships. So for example, let's say that I work on commission for every club member I sign up. Right? So I get you to sign up. I get you to sign up, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. I get you to sign up, I get my commission, but when you get home, you do what? Cancel the credit card, exactly. You cancel the credit card, and you're out of that second. But I got my commission. So, if that kind of behavior is common, then we should see the length of club memberships of wineries whose tasting room staff works on commission. The average length of club membership would be shorter than that of tasting room staff that doesn't get a commission for each club member they sign up. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That makes sense to me. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking at that. So, okay, back to this stuff. So Highway 29. Our model is that's beta 2 holiday. That's it. That's it. Right? Beta 1 is going to be our growth rate. Beta 2 is going to be our spike. How big is that spike? Right? Is that a hand or an itch? An itch? Are you fixing your hair?
No, it's just
Oh, an itch? Okay. All right. Right. Okay. Or as, what do you guys call it? The trail. I'm not as local.
When we get the data set, will it be growth?
Yeah. And this will be LN cases equals beta 1 time plus beta 2 holiday plus beta 3 Silverado plus beta 4, Silverado time, times, time, plus beta 5, which is Silverado holiday. Times holiday. That's a mess, though. What we can do is boil this down. Instead of trying to interpret this, let's collect terms and put it into a context that we can understand, just like we've done on every other paper. So we've got beta 0 plus, I'm going to do this, beta 1. What else is a function of time? Beta 4. Beta 4. Time. Right? So beta 4 would represent what? What value does it have to us?
Immediate growth rate of Silverado Trail relative to Highway 29.
It's the what?
Growth rate of Silverado Trail relative to Highway 29.
Real close.
Difference.
It's the difference in the growth rate of Silverado Trail relative to Highway 29. Right? If there is no difference in the time turns of sales, then what should beta 4 be? 0, exactly. If Silverado Trail is growing faster, beta 4 will be positive. If Silverado Trail is growing slower, beta 4 will be negative. So it's the difference in the growth rate of Silverado Trail relative to Highway 29.
And Highway 29 is my control, right?
Highway 29 is going to be our control. Yeah. Let's see, we've got a couple of holiday functions here. We've got beta 2 plus Silverado times holiday is beta 5. Beta 2, if you remember, is the bump in sales in the holiday on Highway 29, or for Highway 29 wineries. What does that make, I'm sorry, what does that make beta 5?
The difference of the spikes.
The difference in the size of the spikes, the holiday sales. Remember, that's a big deal.
Can you say that one more time? What's the difference in the
It's
spikes?
the difference in the holiday sales of Silverado Trail wineries relative to Highway 29.
Beta 2 plus beta 5 is the difference in the spike?
Beta 5 is the difference.
Okay.
Beta 2 plus beta 5 is going to be the size of the spike. So beta 2 is the size of the holiday spike. Beta 2 plus beta 5 is the size of the holiday spike for Silverado Trail. So beta 5 is the difference in the size of the holiday spike for Silverado Trail relative to Highway 29.
I need you to say that again.
I'm not sure I can, but I'll try. We got beta 2? So beta 2 is the size of the holiday spike for Highway 29. Right? Beta 5 is the difference in the size of the holiday spike for Silverado Trail relative to Highway 29.
So if beta 5 is positive, then it has a higher spike.
If beta 5 is positive, then
Then
Silverado
29.
Trail has higher holiday sales. If beta 5 is negative, then Silverado Trail has lower holiday sales. And to me, that's not just to the wine industry, but intuitively that makes a big deal. Because if you're not someone that drinks wine every night, when you do drink wine, it's probably during the holidays. You're grabbing a couple of bottles of wine to go to grandma's house. And you're gonna buy based on kind of your experience, brand loyalty, tasting room experience. And it doesn't even have to be your experience, because the best, maybe if you learned it at the JC or if you learned it from Rich Campbell, which I doubt. But what do they always say is the best form of advertising?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth, exactly. That story I told you about B.R. Cohen. I tell that to other people, and they'll remember that story. That's pretty cool that he got treated that well, and they didn't even know that. Maybe I'll try the wine. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. So it's word of mouth. It's the same way you learn about a lot of other things. But I get home to Nebraska and I say, hey, coworker, dude. And I'd probably say dude because that's how cool I am. Hey, coworker, dude, you got to try B.R. Cohen. It's a great wine, and I had a great time with it. Right? And that's word of mouth advertising. You can't hate it. That's the best kind of advertising. A lot of that's going to happen for non-regular wine drinkers is going to happen in those holidays. So I want to see if those holiday spikes are bigger than my treatment group relative to my control group.
So the equation below, this is the condensed version, and it means that they do the exact same thing with label.
These two are the exact same thing. Yeah. But we've done this every time we've written out these long ones.
Even though then this one doesn't have the constant.
Constant's right here.
But on the top it's not.
You're right.
So
That's
you're
why,
saying.
that's my problem.
We haven't done that.
Yeah, we have.
Can you just take out?
We've done this every single time. You just said, I had a misprint. But you talked about collective terms. We've done that every single time.
What about beta 3, the Silverado?
Is beta 3 gone?
Yeah.
Where did beta 3 go?
Okay,
Silverado, oh, it's for here, yeah. Again with the constant. It'll be beta 0 plus beta 3. It's the difference in intercepts. Good at. Both of you good at. We're really not that concerned about the intercepts because that really will separate, it'll represent the difference in sales. So bigger wineries, right? If for example, Highway 29 wineries are bigger, that's really where the size will show up is in the intercepts. And shipping them up and down. What we really want to see is, what we're concerned about is the time trends and the holiday sales. Do the time trends differ? And is that difference statistically significant? How do I do that again? How's it letter? What was it? No, how do I test for significance? There's a letter. A T-stat, yeah. So I want to see if that's different and is it statistically significant. I want to see if this is positive or negative, and is that statistically significant. Right? Because if neither of those are statistically significant, then really there's no difference in time trends, or there's no difference in holiday sales.
Just for clarification, so beta 4 difference in Silverado relative to 29, the growth rate difference, right?
Correct.
Beta 5 difference in spikes relative to one another, once again, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Difference in holiday sales.
Yeah. Holiday, yeah, there's less difference. And then them added together, so beta 2 added to beta 5.
Would be the holiday sales for Silverado Trail wines. Just as, good point though. So beta 4 and beta 5 are differences. Whenever we look at the coefficients of dummies or interactions with dummies, the interpretation is always going to be a difference. right? Just as here. A difference in sales during the holidays relative to what? The rest of the year. So it's a difference in sales, it's that holiday spike. Difference in time trend, but beta 4, I'm sorry, beta 1 plus beta 4
The growth rate is Silverado, right?
is the growth rate, is the time trend, the growth rate of Silverado Trail.
And the growth rate of the 29 is just that beta 1?
It's beta 1. Beta 2 plus beta 5 represents the holiday sales of Silverado Trail,
So the holiday that spike you're talking about?
is the size of that spike.
Okay.
So beta 1 plus beta 5 is the size of the spike. But our main concern isn't necessarily the size of the spike, is if beta 2 plus beta 5 is bigger than beta 2. Right? Which means, is beta 5 something different than 0? Yeah, is it positive, negative? Well, it means they're not statistically different from 0. And the time trends are going to be the same, and the holiday sales will be roughly the same. Yeah, we're not seeing any difference between low pressure, what I'm calling low pressure tasting rooms, relaxed tasting rooms, and high pressure, pushy tasting rooms, congested, crowded tasting rooms.
So what we're trying to find out in these graphs is which holiday spike is greater and which growth rate?
Is greater. And we're going to attribute that to the tasting room experience. So that's the ultimate question is, which is the better sales technique? Which is the better sales technique? I gave this at another conference, and one of the guys was literally a door-to-door salesman. He says, "Hey man, I make my living off sales, and door-to-door salesmen aren't known for being subtle." So he says he's got to be pushy. That's his job. I'm not saying that.